tutorial, I'm going to kind of take you through something called dynamic messaging in Max, which is actually one of the more important concepts to wrap your head around. It's going to come out a lot. It's going to come into play a lot when we're doing stuff with jitter and whatnot. So just to like recap, we have objects and we have messages. And they look the same. Objects have that border around them like this. Messages are just a blank kind of gray thing. And an object is basically, it has code in it. It's something that I can start typing in. So if I type in random, you can see it's already auto-completing. It has a thing that it does. In this case, it generates a random number. I give it a 30. So like, there's actually code inside of this object that tells it how it's supposed to function, how it's like, what it can do and whatnot, and we can change that by sending it arguments. Like this 30 is an example of an argument, and we can set attributes. It's another part of that. Messages are, for lack of a better word, they're kind of dumb. They're like, in the sense that there's no interior thing happening in it. They're just a kind of a blank slate. They're a repository for data. If I start to type something in here, there's no autocomplete because it's literally what you see is what you get. And the point of messages is usually to communicate with objects, to give it information, to tell it to behave in a different way, and to use messages to set the attribute or the argument for an object. There is one thing messages can do though that bring it almost to like coding, and that's called dynamic messages, and it looks like this. If I were to type in something like, actually if we go here we can actually check, I think, never mind on that, but actually if we go to Metro, we'll change this one. And I can actually check right here. If I right click on the inlet of something, this is kind of like a debug thing that you may use later on. If I right click on this, it'll show me all the attributes that I can change. So things like what the interval is, which is a fancy way of saying like how often does the Metro update, and it's 33 milliseconds. Normally I just type that in because Metro knows that that's something it wants to do. Active is something different. I could set that by saying at active, I name that, and then I give it the argument, and I say 1 to turn it on. The other way you could do this, if I get rid of this, is I could say active, and you can see it's this auto-completing here because it's identifying that there's an object here and that this is an attribute of that object. So active 1. And I could also say active 0, and let's just get a bang here to, I'll set the interval to be something like 500. And if I click on this again, it's setting the message active 1 to that. If I do this, but it's annoying to have to say active 1, active 0. What if I could just make this argument right here, the 1 and the 0, a dynamic thing that I can change? And it looks like this. $1. And what we're usually using that $1 for is to essentially say, this is a placeholder. Information's going to come into this message, and we're going to put it right here. So I could actually just clean this up a little bit. I could get a toggle, which you remember returns a 1 or a 0, and we would clock it. And the 1 and 0 coming out of here is being placed right here. It's saying, oh, I received some information, some data. It's one element, and it's going to go right here. And I could even hook up this message right here, lock it again, and you can see that 1 and 0 is going right there. We could even change this to interval. And now I'm going to get rid of this, and I'll get a integer, I, for the hotkey. And I'll lock it, Command D. you can see that now I'm changing, rather than using this inlet or typing it in here, I'm changing at that speed. I could change it to every second. So what we're doing is we have this dynamic place where we can have like a value that's changing over time like that. Now what is happening with this $1? Like, why is that? The $sign is essentially saying that this is a placeholder, something will go here. And the 1 is saying what index or what element of the incoming message should I grab and place here. And this doesn't mean anything right here because there's only one. It's this element. It's 1000. Now it's 500. But this is where lists come into play. So going back to one of our first tutorials, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off. I could say pack. Actually, do POC 0, 0, 0. Integer, integer, integer. And now I'm going to say message list $1, $2, $3. Make another message with the hotkey M, space it out a little bit. And it looks like maybe I screwed something up here. Here it is. I guess the lowercase list might mean something in the language, so I just made it capital. But essentially, you see, like let's just change this to something less confusing, actually. Values. And what it's saying is we have this 3 indexed list right here. There's 3 elements to it. The first number, the second number, and the third number. With this, we're saying take the first element of whatever information we're getting here and put it here. Take the second element, put it here. Take the third element, put it here. And that's fine because it all lines up just like we're ordering it. But it does mean I could also do this. I could change the order. And the second index is fine. But you see in this, the third element, again here, is right here at the end. But in writing this, I've actually changed the order around. So they're saying the third element of the incoming list goes here, the second element goes here, and the first element goes last. So that's, in that sense, like, this is why that 1 makes sense over here. It's not really that there's any complexity for it because there's only 1 element, but if we start working with more than 1, we can say that we want it to all end up like that. And also saying, like just even dragging off here, option, hold, click, I could replace this to be 1, 1. Now we're saying take the first element of the list, put it here, and here, and here. And all the other elements, the second and third, there's nothing to be done. You're just taking the first element. So that's how dynamic messaging works. And yeah, when we get into more complex arguments for objects, we're going to want to set things up like this. We might need to give it the y-index, or the the horizontal and the vertical location of something. So it might be like a location, $1, $2, we give it 2 values, the x and the y. Working with color is usually in 3 colors, RGB, so we might give it the $1 would be the red, $2 the green, etc. But yeah, check out the patch that goes along with this, and hopefully that should clear up any other questions you have around this.